A flavour there of some fiery rhetoric in the Commons. Let's talk to Bronwen Maddox. She's director of the research body, the Institute for Government. Bronwen, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Interesting Andrew Mitchell there. We had Theresa May, a few other MPs, most of them invoking the views of their constituents, depending on their point of view. And those supporting the Prime Minister said their constituents wholeheartedly backed him and believed his apology. Those who did not support the Prime Minister made it clear that their constituents were angry. Is that essentially what we're talking about here? The effect on backbench MPs of this report and the views of their constituents as to whether or not they continue to support the Prime Minister?
No, I think we're talking about something wider than that. We're talking about national anger by many people, not all, as you said, about the way that the parties' gatherings, as Sue Gray's report calls them, in and around Downing Street, seem to make a mockery of the sacrifices that people made during lockdown. And it's very hard to get away from that, I think. There are 2 points to me that are really difficult for the Prime Minister in this. One is the portrait of disorganisation within Downing Street, the culture, drinking excessively, the report says, by any professional standards, of having gatherings of just a vast number of people. And while it doesn't exactly pin that on the Prime Minister, it talks about failures of leadership and who's responsible other than the leader, you might ask. The other one is in the very few specific details that the report goes into, it does break some news, if you like, in giving us details of the complete list of gatherings that took place, 16, it says, that are now under some kind of investigation, 12 of those under police investigation. Some of them new, publicly new. And the hammering that the Prime Minister got in the Commons today from all sides was about some of those, in particular one in his own flat, and MPs trying to home in on whether he could be said to have misled Parliament about whether or not the guidelines were observed.
Now, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, we'll go back to what you said earlier about national anger in a second, but that alleged party on the 13th of November 2020, and this was the same day that Dominic Cummings left the employ of the Prime Minister and Downing Street. The police are investigating this. The allegation from the opposition is that the Prime Minister lied about this particular party to the Commons. Is that, do you think, a particular point of jeopardy for him?
I think it is. Now, you can debate what a lie is, and what they're talking about is a statement to the House in the first week of December, just last year, about that specific gathering where he said, whatever happened, I am sure that the guidelines were observed. And it's that they're pushing at. And MPs got up to say, look, this particular alleged gathering was in your own flat. You don't need to wait for the police to say whether or not you were there, to which the Prime Minister's response was, wait for the police. I think that is at one point of danger, though it does depend what the police find and when that is.
I mean, the supporters of Boris Johnson would say, are the public really expected to believe that under Blair, Brown, the coalition, Cameron and Theresa May, there was no drinking culture, there was no sense of disorganisation, there was no booze at work, all this suddenly came in under Boris Johnson?
I don't think that's quite how the report puts it. It describes a culture, this is not a long report, it's 5.5 pages, but some of the details are very kind of really press it home to the Prime Minister. It describes a culture of drinking what it calls excessively, and saying it's inappropriate really in any professional context. So it doesn't make comment on whether people have always had a bottle of wine under the desk in parts of Downing Street or something. Yeah. It's talking about a culture of this. It's also talking about the size and structure of the staff supporting the Prime Minister and painting a picture of just how big and lacking in organisation that was. And that is new. And some of that, we know actually Sue Gray was concerned about this even before this inquiry came up, about the sheer size of the teams in that very heart of government. So it's a picture that it is saying some of this is new.
Yeah, he's got to publish the full report, hasn't he?
I think he does. I don't think MPs are going to let up on that point. But he does have cover, if you like, no one is saying intended, from the Metropolitan Police, who are now going to have their investigation of 12 gatherings. And I think they are now they have not handled this well, in my view. They are now under considerable pressure to publish in full. If they don't, he will be under enormous pressure to publish the Sue Gray original report that was going to be published last week in full.
Okay. Bronwen, thank you for that. Bronwen Maddox there. Thank you for joining us.